Of course, we'll be staying on the topic of the European Parliament elections. The European Parliament elections saw the biggest party, the EPP, maintain its position, with the socialists and Democrats coming in second. However, not all parties have a reason to celebrate.
Yes, indeed. To talk about the biggest winners and losers of this year's election, we're joined by our next guest, Mr. Melchior Szczepanik, head of the Polish Institute for International Affairs Brussels office, who specializes in institutional system of the EU. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, sir.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
I would like to begin by something that I saw in the Politico today, and it made me chuckle. Who will be bouncing out of bed and who will be waking up to a living nightmare? In your opinion, who won, who lost, and who, to say it more colloquially, messed up?
I think globally the biggest winner are the centrist pro-European parties from the center left and the center right, because they maintain their advantage in the European Parliament. So they will have around 400 mandates in a parliament that is of 720 members. So that gives them a relatively big majority, and they can continue their current policy, which consists of negotiating and and building compromises together.
Right, you said that the status quo is more or less maintained, yet EPP secured 181 seats. That's 10 seats better than in 2019. Although Socialists and Democrats lost 5 seats, and the third party of this grand coalition, the centrist Renew Europe, seems to be bleeding. They lost 23 seats in total. So the situation doesn't seem too bright for this grand coalition, does it?
Well, of course, they won't be as strong as they were in the previous term, but still their majority is relatively comfortable, I would say. Of course, there are some national parties that cannot consider this election a success, and that's probably the party of the French president, Emmanuel Macron. They lost, I think, something like 10 seats, almost half of their seats in the European Parliament. So when it comes to this particular party, they cannot consider this election as a success. There is also a Spanish liberal party, Ciudadanos, which was a member of this liberal alliance, and they actually ceased to exist. So there are some parties that suffered, but as I said, globally, this alliance maintains their strong position. Of course, the parties that are generally called Eurosceptic, right-wing Eurosceptics, they will be stronger in this European Parliament. And they did well, but perhaps not as well as most of the forecast predicted. I think we generally tend to interpret this election through the prism of the situation in France, where the Eurosceptics did very well. But if we look at some other member states, in some countries such as Sweden, Finland, the Netherlands, for example, the Eurosceptic parties gained a bit fewer mandates than it was predicted by 1 or 2 mandates. So not in every member state they did very well. You mentioned Hungary just a few minutes ago, and there Viktor Orban's party lost a couple of mandates. So definitely the Eurosceptics will be more visible and more present in the European Parliament, but they don't have enough mandates to be able to make a significant impact on the policy of on the positions of the European Parliament.
With how the votes seem to be distributed after this election, I wanted to ask you, what do you think is going to be Ursula von der Leyen's future as of now? Do you think that her position in any way, shape or form is somewhat secured?
Well, I think she remains the most likely candidate for president of the European Commission. So she will likely be re-elected. in order to elect her, the leaders of the member states have to approve this choice, and also a majority in the European Parliament has to back her. When it comes to the leader of member states, I think she remains someone around whom a compromise can be built. Most of the leaders assessed positively what she did in the current term, in the last few years. So now it would be a bit strange to replace her by someone else, especially given the fact that her political party, the Christian Democrats, did quite well in the election, and they are by far the largest political group in the European Parliament. And when it comes to the European Parliament, there is, as I said, there is a centrist majority who, in theory, should back her. So I think at the moment she is the most likely candidate. But of course, it won't be a very easy, because the European Commission, which she will have to create now, will include politicians from a variety of parties. So there will be some social democrats, but there will also be some conservatives. So it will take a bit of work to convince a majority of the European Parliament that such a heterogeneous European Commission can be effective.
Well, arithmetics show us clearly that the Greens, who would also love to join this coalition, are not very much needed right now by Ursula von der Leyen to secure her position. Now they only get 53 seats. That's 18 less than in 2019. Now, is this the aftermath of the so-called Green Deal, or how to explain this election result?
Well, I think the Greens can be counted as losers of this election. I believe when it comes to the Green Deal and the efforts made by the European Union to battle climate change, or the climate catastrophe, as it is sometimes called, they didn't bring the results that were expected. So the European Union was not able to convince the vast majority of citizens that these actions are well prepared, and it wasn't able to prove that they will be backed by proper funds. And the Greens suffered because of that. So I think now fewer people are convinced that they are ready to contribute to battling climate change, and this is, I think, the major reason for weaker support for the Greens. But I think in general the Green Deal as such will remain one of the priorities of the European Union, because this is important not only for the Greens, but also for the Social Democrats, for the centrists, and for the majority of EU leaders. The EU will simply have to reconsider certain policies and certain ideas and adjust them in order to be able to implement them.
And finally, a short question, last but not least, with Marine Le Pen's victory and the dissolvement of the National Assembly by Emmanuel Macron, obviously the situation in France domestically is definitely going to change. How do you think this is going to actually influence the continent and the European Union structures?
Well, I think this is a very dangerous situation for the European Union, because I'm afraid that the French election may be inconclusive. So after the French election, France could find itself in a situation when creating a government is impossible, and there is no clear majority for the government. So this wouldn't be a positive situation for the European Union, because there wouldn't be a clear position from France, and that will slow down the decision-making process in the European Union. This is one possibility. If indeed the French right-wing Eurosceptics manage to win the election clearly and create a government, then again we would have quite a lot of disputes and disagreements on the EU level. I think it would be more difficult to find compromises with Marine Le Pen as French Prime Minister.
Melchior Szczepanik, head of the Polish Institute of International Affairs office in Brussels, where I was guest tonight. Thank you so much for sharing your views with us.
Thanks for having me.